Rfk Jr. is going to be endorsing President Trump this Friday in Los Angeles.
Kamala Harris and Walt's presidency, because we draw votes from Trump, or we draw somehow more votes from Trump, or we walk away right now and join forces with Donald Trump, and you know, we walk away from that and we explain to our base why we're making this decision.
Touch this issue in the thumbnail of the video that you guys are seeing in the B-roll footage right now. And of course, what I'm talking about is Nicole Shanahan basically explaining why it is that the RFK team is highly considering dropping out of the presidential race and endorsing Donald Trump. However, I'm here to tell you guys right now that this, to me, is not as clean-cut as you might would think. And I'm also going to talk about what to expect in case he does do it. Now, before we get started, Alex Jones, he went on about this the other day. Now, I'm going to play the first part of what he said, because you guys obviously saw a little bit there at the very beginning of the video. And then I'm going to play the full 2-minute segment that Nicole Shanahan did, or at least 2 minutes of the full 5-minute segment where she actually got into the meat of what's going on with the situation involving Robert F. Kennedy. And I'm going to try to explain to you guys in this video what would happen and, of course, why it was that he decided to endorse, or why it is that he's considering endorsing Donald Trump.
I've got major breaking exclusive news right now in the middle of the DNC on this Tuesday, August 20th, 2024 broadcast. It's been a huge viral story since midday when the vice president pick by Rfk Jr., Nicole Shanahan, did a podcast this morning and said that they were strongly considering joining the Trump campaign so that the globalists, so that Kamala Harris and Tim Walz do not get in there. I shot a report about it a few hours ago, and then I started reaching out to some of my contacts, and I was able to...
Okay, now you guys obviously heard that. However, I do think that the rest of the context behind this situation would be better suited if we went ahead and played the other segment that I was talking about. Here's the roughly 2-minute segment that Nicole Shanahan put out on her side of this discussion.
Tells me right now is that we just have to keep being honest. I got to just keep being honest. I got to keep focusing on what matters the most outside of party lines. I need to focus on a vision that goes beyond November. And if that means that we stay in, and, you know, there's benefits to staying in. If we get over 5% of the vote, we actually establish ourselves as a party. 71% of Americans want a strong third party with a real shot at winning. There's even public funds available if we get over 5% of the vote. So we could get, so, you know, there's two options that we're looking at. And one is staying in, forming that new party, but we run the risk of a Kamala Harris and Walt's presidency, because we draw votes from Trump, or we draw somehow more votes from Trump, or we walk away right now and join forces with Donald Trump, and you know, we walk away from that and we explain to our base why we're making this decision.
That's obviously a lot there. You guys obviously have got a lot to try to take in there. However, I'm here to tell you guys right now that even though Nicole Shanahan went on Fox News and basically told them that, yeah, Trump's had to go through a lot of legal battles, and of course the RFK campaign has had to go through a lot of legal battles. And of course, the Democrats, in my opinion, were screwed regardless going in this election, because you have people like Dr. Cornel West and Jill Stein taking away a certain section of their base, which happens to be young people, college people, and the Free Palestine crowd, which of course is all over the Midwestern United States. Yeah, I don't think that polls are going to make a flip in this election because once again, the same thing is going to be proven true once again, like always. It's turnout that wins elections, not polls. However, I don't think it's as cut and dry as you might think. And I think some further context needs to be added to this little bit that people are going crazy about because they think that RFK endorsing Trump is going to make a difference in this election cycle. And of course, there are people, and the one I'm going to reference the most in this video is Richard Barris, because Richard Barris actually had a very good take on this. And I can kind of sort of confirm this way because I've seen it more recently. Whereas before I thought it was mostly suburbanites that would be voting for RFK, there's actually a different wrinkle here that I think makes this situation make a lot more sense. Now, guys, if you remember correctly, after Trump got assassinated, or the failed assassination tip, I call it assassinated because they did actually shoot him. The guy did hit him. It just didn't kill the former president. And the thing is this right here, there was a video that was released. I'm playing for you guys in the B-roll footage. Now, I would play the full video for you guys, but the problem is that the volume is pretty bad, so I'm just going to link it in the description box. And, of course, RFK had a conversation with Trump after the assassination. RFK, by the way, seeing how it is that his father was killed, seeing how it was that his uncle was killed by the DS, it seems to me that this man might have a bit of an axe to grind with those in the elite circles. I'm pausing for a second because I think more context needs to be added to this. RFK also was friends with a lot of the people in the Democratic Party circles. He was an environmental attorney, and of course, as an environmental attorney, he had such crazy takes as people should be locked up for denying CG. I say CG because of how the YouTube algorithm works, because I'm pretty sure you guys know exactly where I'm going with this. He's an environmentalist. He's an environmentalist fruitcake, if you ask me. And while his endorsement may be a positive, I think we need to think long and hard before we decide to just up and give him a cabinet position. And if so, what position should he get? Before we get into more of the meat of this discussion, I want to play a little bit more Alex Jones for you because he's going to go into much, much more detail about the cabinet positions that RFK wants.
That Rfk Jr. is going to be endorsing President Trump this Friday in Los Angeles. And I was given other details, but I'm not going to give those out about how they're going to do it at this point. This is from inside the Rfk Jr. campaign from a very, very trusted source. And it turns out that when I started reaching out to people, they reached out to some of their contacts, and then I was called back from someone inside of their operation who'd already seen the X post we did about 2 hours ago at Real Alex Jones, where I surmised the fact that RFK Jr. saw his father murdered when he was the Attorney General, saw his uncle, the president, murdered, and that he saw them attempt to kill Trump, and that he knows that the same Secret Service that's been trying to get him killed has not given him any...
It's very true. The Secret Service has, for the most part, not given this guy protection. Of course, Biden was in charge of that. And to this day, RFK Jr. still has not gotten that Secret Service protection. But the thing is this right here. Do they want RFK to be, I don't know, as you guys could possibly, probably think to yourselves right off the bat, do they want something to happen to RFK because of what he might expose? No, I think they would want RFK to basically take one. And of course, I'm having to use very, very odd language here because if you say certain words here on the platform, the video gets demonetized, the ads get limited. You guys know how it is. And obviously, I want this video to get out there. Oh, by the way, if you guys haven't already done so, please go ahead and hit the like button. Please go ahead and subscribe. It doesn't cost you anything, and it also helps the channel out. It helps the channel grow. It also gets the videos out there, so that way we can break the censorship, and also cut on the notifications in your phone and everything, so that way you guys know when these videos come out. But still, going back to what I was just saying, the thing is this right here. I don't think that that's the real reason why they would allow RFK to get hurt. You see, the thing is this right here. RFK is still friends with a lot of these people up top. Now, granted, they've thrown him under the bus here recently, called him crazy, they've called him a nut, all kinds of stuff like that. But I think the real reason why they've done that is because they know that RFK actually hurts their base of support. But of course, now you've got the Democrat pollsters screaming and hollering saying that, well, him dropping out doesn't change anything because this is kind of how these people are. The truth be told is RFK takes from both sides of the base. He takes the more suburban, working class, progressive side of the Democratic Party base. He takes from there, but he also takes some jilted Trump voters and some jilted, let's just say, I still call them the DeSantis bots, even though they're not connected to Ron DeSantis. They're what you call the fanboys, but they're really kind of fake fanboys. You can kind of tell by their Twitter profiles that they're just repackaged Democrats, or they're people who just created a second account to try to screw with the Trump base. I wouldn't take these people serious. But still, though, at the same time, though, I don't think that's the real reason why it was that they would allow RFK to basically be exposed the way he is. I think the real reason why they're doing it is because he literally hurts their chances at getting elected. But recently, they've realized that, they're looking at the numbers and they're probably saying to themselves, look, this may actually hurt Trump more if we let him go because some of these voters are, in fact, coming back to Kamala, which is true. Some of them are. But we'll talk more about that here in a second. But I did mention earlier Robert F. Kennedy Jr., the possibility of cabinet positions that he may gun for.
He had been gunning for the head of the EPA or the head of the NIH or even the Attorney General slot that his father, Robert F. Kennedy Sr., had. And again, I've talked to several sources, but that definitely has resonated with folks. So I can, again, announce to you here, and then I'll talk about some of the issues involved and why this is so important and so big, that RFK Jr. is set Friday to announce in Los Angeles that he is dropping out of the 2024 race and endorsing Donald John Trump. RFK Jr. has also really been upset by being taken off the ballot of his home state for most of his life, New York City, and the fact that the corporate media and the Democrats didn't just refuse him Secret Service protection, but that they also, again, did things like pull him off the ballot when he was legally and lawfully on it, saying he didn't even live in the state, even though he's domiciled there. So the Democrats arrogantly...
So I'll let that one run just a little bit longer, okay? Just a little bit longer so that way you guys could kind of see what's going on. First and foremost, let's talk about the cabinet positions. If we were to give him, or if the Trump supporting base, which, by the way, it is good political instincts for Trump to let him come in and do the endorsement. It is good political instincts for Trump to get all the votes. Because guess what? In election time, you need to get all the votes you can get. You need to get in office so that way you can actually establish a mandate and help turn the country around, both at the state and local level and also at the federal level. And you guys need to go out there and vote for your congressman. And you also need to vote for Senate. So that way, the Trump guy, should he get elected, the Trumpster would, in fact, be able to actually enact policies, unlike what happened in his first term when he didn't have a Senate that was on board or a legislative body that was on board. This right here would be more amicable to actually do this. But still, though, the thing is this right here. If you look at RFK's past, he's never been exactly a pro-gun guy. He's always been anti-gun, anti-Second Amendment. So no ATF position for him. I definitely would not give him control of the ATF. I damn sure don't want him to have the Environmental Protection Agency, even though he might want that. But if anything, what I would do is maybe allow him to be Attorney General. I mean, that right there is what his daddy did when his daddy was in his brother's White House. Excuse me, when I'm talking about his daddy and his brother's White House, I'm talking about Bobby Kennedy and JFK. Now, Bobby Kennedy, I never would have ever voted for under any circumstances as president. Bobby Kennedy was damn near a communist. As a matter of fact, Bobby Jr.'s politics are not that different from his daddy's. Jack Kennedy, I think, was okay, but Ted Kennedy and Bobby Kennedy were terrible. But what Bobby Kennedy was good at was he was good at investigations. He was a very, very mean SOB. In some cases, he went a little bit too far. Like, for example, in the case of auditing Hannah Nixon, who was in a nursing home at the time she got audited. But at this point in time, though, now that times have changed, obviously we have a lot more people on the other side of the aisle who've got, let's just say, much, much harsher intentions. I think that using someone like Bobby Kennedy in the Attorney General spot may have its actual advantages, even though I personally think that someone like Ken Paxton or Dan Patrick should probably get that position. Either way, though, I think Bobby Kennedy could do the Attorney General job. Keep him away from the EPA and keep him the hell away from... keep him the hell away from the EPA, keep him the hell away from the ATF. USDA, however, I could see him being okay at that. I want to say he's kind of a food freak. He might be able to find out some things, maybe be able to clean that department up, and maybe the HUD secretary. But outside of that, I probably would just consider him just for those jobs there alone to keep him away from the big ones. The fact of the matter is that the other half of what you guys saw is that Bobby Kennedy Jr. has been screwed over. They keep trying to kick him off the ballot. They recently kicked Cornel West off the ballot in another state. And I think what's going on is that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is really and truly getting tired of this. He feels like he's getting screwed. Now, whether his supporters will vote for the orange guy or not, that right there remains to be seen. But we'll get to that here in a second because we're almost done with this video. But I want to play the last part that I have of Alex Jones because Alex Jones recently has been getting it right.
Screwed him and screwed all of his supporters. Depending on the poll, he is 6 to 10 to 12 points of people that are saying they're going to vote. He's not like the Libertarian Party or some little party. He has real support. So you add Trump being 20 points ahead in national polls, real polls, 10, 15 points ahead in battleground states, despite all the spin polls that are trying to gaslight people, adding even 5, 6 points on the low end, 10, 12 points on the high end, absolutely is the ultimate game changer, and it's so important, and it's such amazingly positive and exciting news for the world.
Jones is talking about the actual amount of the vote that RFK could get. Now, me personally, I don't think that his percentages were ever any higher than 6% on the national level. Most polls show him somewhere between 3 and 5. They may be trying to downplay his overall support because one of the things that they do is they throw out a bunch of crap polls in the hopes that Republicans will get scared and not show up to vote. This is something that I talked a little bit about in the previous video, the video that comes out at 12 o'clock, or the video that did come out at 12 o'clock. I talked about Kamala Harris possibly being named president anyways before the election, or maybe even after the election, even though she more than likely will lose. The fact of the matter is this is one of the tricks that the liberal media loves to play, and they bring out these crap pollsters that still get A ratings like Monmouth and Quinnipiac University and NPR Marist and Morning Consult, people who quite frankly suck at their jobs. They do this in the hopes that the people, the conservatives, are gullible enough to not show up and vote, even though obviously conservatives have a candidate that they really truly like and actually do want to vote for. It's kind of the opposite of what happened in 2012, which is kind of funny because the Democrats are trying to run a campaign similar to what they ran in 2012. But of course, the reason why Obama got over in 2012 was because conservatives and Republicans really and truly did not like their candidates. So therefore, they didn't show up on election day and actually vote in mass like they needed to. In the case of Trump, they fear that this right here could in fact be the case. So what do? You throw out more and more crap polls in the hopes that these people get blackpilled and don't show up. Of course, you also downplay RFK's support as well, making those voters think that, yeah, your vote doesn't really matter. Because these right here were people who chose RFK because maybe they felt they were jilted by Trump, or maybe it's because they think that the current Democratic Party has not gone left enough. The truth be told about this particular vote is that these people are a bit more of a mixed bag. Or as Richard Barris is about to explain, there are some that are on the working class front that quite frankly felt somewhat jilted from the Trump administration.
The national polls were misleading in the beginning. Biden was unpopular. People couldn't bring themselves to admit they would vote for somebody who's senile. Like, this is what it was. And when you looked in the battleground states, it was much more complicated, much more convoluted about who would it hurt and where. In Minnesota, it did look like it would hurt Biden more. But in Michigan and Pennsylvania, it looked like it would hurt Trump more. And overall, I was saying I believed RFK would hurt Trump more because there are no educated, Valium, wino, suburban, credentialed, Joy Behar watching suburban women out there that are going to vote for RFK.
Now, I'll play the other half of that in a second, but what Richard Barris is trying to say, by the way, best pollster in the country, People's Pundit, I advise you guys got to check him out. What Richard Barris is trying to say is that the polls were misleading when it came to RFK. Of course, RFK, a good size of his support is going to be in the state he lives in, California. Of course, the big size of RFK's support is going to be in states like, say, Massachusetts, and of course, states like, say, Maine or the New England area where they're not going to vote for Trump anyways. And of course, even voting for RFK, the Democrats probably not going to be that effective. Of course, there is a nostalgia for Kennedy name, but still, that right there is not as big as you might think it would be. Or else the last Kennedy would have won his election instead of getting primaried out in the state of Massachusetts, of all places. But the thing is this right here. What about states like, say, Minnesota, Wisconsin, the Midwest? Well, RFK was getting a lot of two types of supporters. He was getting some working class supporters who didn't like either side or either candidate, and they felt somewhat jilted by the Democratic Party. And of course, he was also getting some progressive loons. These right here are the progressive loons that think more about stuff through the more environmental lens, and they're upset with the Democratic Party for not going far enough left. But there is one more voter that he was getting that I do disagree with Richard Barris on, but I'll talk about that after we play the next segment.
He was attracting, and this is the part that did hurt Biden, a piece of the working class base, that Democratic base that has not yet gone to Republicans, but doesn't like Democrats. Biden in 20, Barnes and I spent a lot of time talking about this on Monday. But Biden in 20 did well in like Lackawanna and Scranton and Pike and even Northampton. He did better in areas like that where Obama and Gore and Kerry even, I mean, they had this core working class base. Trump.
Okay, now here's the one thing I do disagree with Richard on. When he talked about the wine sipping, Joy Behar watching suburbanite liberal woman or suburban woman, I do think that RFK was getting a good portion of those. I mean, there weren't that many, but he was getting enough to where it could possibly matter. These right here were voters that probably could have voted for Trump at some point in time. But then again, at the same time, it's also what we call the extra vote, the excess vote that could vote for Kamala Harris. However, I don't think that's going to matter now because I think what's going to end up happening is that they're just going to vote for Harris now anyways, regardless. However, the working class section that I mentioned earlier, that right there more than likely will show up to the ballot box and say, you know what, screw it, vote Republican up and down the ballot. You know what, screw it, put Trump back in there. I was better off when he was in office. I don't like his mouth or anything, but I think I'm over mean tweaks. I'm not going to get what the hell it is that I want. So, yes, it could very, very well have an impact. And even if the impact is only 1 to 1.5 points, it's actually a pretty big impact because guess what? In this country, we elect people through the Electoral College, not the popular vote. And that right there is the real truth about the polls, as I've been saying the entire time. If you see a poll that has Harris up 4 or 5 nationally, you're probably going to see in the crosstabs that Harris is struggling in those crosstabs. She's struggling with voter groups that she needs. The only group she's not struggling with is the single white woman or single black woman or married black woman or divorcee woman or the beta males, that the soy boys. Now, a lot of people think that that right there is what costed Trump the last election cycle, but I'm here to tell you right now that that's not what killed Donald Trump in the last election cycle. We actually know what the hell it was. But still, though, they got a lot of assistance from people who did the whole anti-COVID vote. Some of these right here were working class voters who thought that their paychecks were getting affected due to the lockdowns. Altogether, I would say that if you took away that side of the vote away from the overall vote, what happens is that the Harris campaign is looking at getting probably anywhere between 6 to 8 million votes less. And then you have to also think about the fact that there's also college people, college kids who aren't exactly enthused about her or probably going to stay home, lower turnout. I'm going to say right now that this particular campaign, and then you've also got the working class women that didn't like Hillary, that like Kamala a lot less. I would say that Kamala Harris has already had a deficit of anywhere between 9 to 12 million votes, where Trump, for the most part, still has his base. Or as Robert Barnes predicted the other day on the People's Pundit, he believed that Trump would end up with 75 and Harris would get 72. I think the real number would be more like 73, 68, something like that. But still, though, the fact of the matter is that RFK endorsing Trump could, in fact, actually help Trump out a little bit more than we thought. Harris, I think what it really is at the end of the day is I just want to stick it to the Democratic Party because they're not the party that I grew up with. I'd be willing to turn to Trump, and Trump, of course, would obviously offer an olive branch. Now, real quick, I did criticize the possibility of a cabinet position, and we had to think long and hard about that. However, Trump's political instincts of allowing RFK in, or at least his supporters in, is exactly what you would do in this case. I've had to tell people, especially during the whole Amber Rose situation, dude, we understand that she's a degenerate. We understand her past. We understand it. We get that. Obviously, we don't want our party to turn into that, but you need votes. You need voters. You need to have this to get over. It's the Matt Walsh types that actually keep the party from growing. Even though the guy is obviously smart, but still at the same time, at the end of the day, he's just saying what the hell everybody's already thinking. You need those raw votes to get over. So, yeah, Kennedy's voters coming over could, in fact, help the Trump team and almost ensure the victory. But you guys tell me what you think in the comment section. I would love to hear what you guys have got to say. Please hit the like button, subscribe, share the video, sign off in the comments, and I'll see you guys later.